Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's May 5th in the year of the plague, 2020. 69,600 Americans have died from COVID or COVID-related morbidities. That's up 877. 877 people died yesterday. As we head towards 100,000, I'm pretty sure that's where we're going to find ourselves by the summer's end, maybe a little bit higher. The country has 1.21 million cases, and that includes 21,000 cases diagnosed yesterday. But the morbidity, the fatality number is not the big story. The big story is actually in the Telegraph of London this morning. And I encourage, by the way, doctors with experience treating COVID to call 1-800-520-1234. I'm getting feedback from the audience that you appreciate the anecdotes. No, anecdotes are not evidence of anything except anecdotes. I want everyone to understand it's not epidemiology. It's not science. It's what trained professional doctors can tell you, excuse me, about it's allergy season in D.C., by the way, and that means when I go out and do my runs and my trundles, after the show, I come back and sound like this, pollen in the throat. But they appreciate hearing from doctors, and you might be on your way to your shift. 1-800-520-1234. You might be coming home from an all-night in the ICU. I would like to talk to you about what you're seeing and who you're seeing. The numbers tell us. Well, let me read to you, I think, the most interesting story of the day. It's from the Telegraph. Now, in Great Britain, the Times of London is their New York Times, and the Telegraph is their Washington Post, in my humble view. In terms of they're equal in their weight, they have different ways of approaching stories. This story is simply titled as a question. Is weight a more significant factor than age in the next stage of lockdown? Should we be considering factors such as BMI, body mass index, when it comes to shielding a specific population? When 106-year-old Connie Titchen was clapped out of Birmingham City Hospital in mid-April, having survived her bout of coronavirus, she gave hope to silver seniors everywhere. From the start of the crisis, increasing age has been associated with lower rates of beating the disease. But here was Connie, who had outlasted the Spanish flu and had now seen off COVID-19 thanks, her family said, to her active and healthy lifestyle. Yet, according to the UK Department of Health, anyone over 70, let alone 100, is at a higher risk of being vulnerable to the effects. There have even been suggestions of putting older Britons among the last to escape lockdown. Some experts are querying whether the use of age as a matrix, the cutoff point at 70 in particular, is a good idea. Might we be better off, they ask, looking at other contributory factors such as, wait for it, weight, when it comes to shielding a specific population? After all, a 70-year-old who plays tennis twice a week, doesn't smoke or drink much alcohol, and whose body mass index is in the normal range, must surely be a better bet against COVID than a 40-year-old who smokes, binge drinks, never exercises, and is clinically obese, ? American researchers at Brown University is already underway that shows patients with a BMI over 35 are more likely to go into intensive care, and those with a BMI over 30, when combined with a history of heart disease, are more likely to need a ventilator as well. When you compare the numbers of those who die by COVID-19 by age and by risk of obesity, not yet. But according to the Office of National Statistics, about 60% of the deaths up till April 17th were men, not women. And yes, obesity matters a lot. Now that's a lot because obesity is also related to diabetes. But those of us, it says, those of us without type 2 diabetes who aren't considered obese shouldn't relax. According to the World Obesity Federation, a high percentage of the world's population who will contract coronavirus will have a BMI over 25. So we could be looking at BMI rather than age as the ultimate risk factor, ? Not enough data yet, says Professor Calder, a professor of national immunology at the University of Southampton. Not enough. But look, it looks like that's where it's going. All right. So this leads me to number 2 story of the morning from the Wall Street Journal. As summer camps weigh reopening, parents scramble for options. And I just don't know that a lot of parents are going to be comfortable sending kids to summer camp. Some camps have already decided they're not going to reopen. Some camps are going to reopen and sprawl the kids out. At Liberty Lake Day Camp in Bordentown, the director, Andy Pritkin, says they increased the number of full-time nurses to 3. They're going to have much more spacing, 108 gallons of hand sanitizer. In addition to sunscreen and the pool towel, we may ask parents to pack a cloth mask. This got me to thinking. I really would like somebody to ask Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci a very practical question. What about swimming pools this summer? I mean, I am an old lifeguard, and I began at Waddell Pool in Niles when I was 17, and I didn't stop lifeguarding until I was 22. Did it during the school year at college. That's how I made money. Did it every summer. A lot better than lifting and working. The easiest job in the world. You pay for it 45 years later with visits to the dermatologist every 4 months and carving you up. But summer pools are for kids, and they are generally guarded by teenagers and young adults. And moms come with their little ones, and then some adults, older people come too. Is it unrealistic to say if you're over 40, you're not coming to the pool? But if you're 40 and you're fit, you can bring your kids. Now, I assume that it will spread around the coronavirus among that age population. But I also assume people break their arms and legs. I saw it. People have head injuries at pool. Pools are not, people drowned at pools. I can't tell you how many people I pulled out of a pool. But it's a place where people need in the summertime. So how about focusing on what people can do? And ought it not to be obvious to everyone that if you limit a pool to parents and children, parents under 40 and children. And by the way, if you're 45, I'm not mad at you, but maybe you let someone else take your kids. Maybe it's parents under 45 and kids. Whatever the science says, let's focus on doing things that we can do. That brings me, by the way, to my friends at Angel Tree Camps. They're not going to run the camps this summer. They can't. These are at-risk kids to begin with. They can't be taken into a dangerous place. They're the children of parents who are in prison. And every year at this time in May, I raise money for them. I mean, every year. And we've sent tens of thousands of kids to camp. But layoffs and school closures and health fears have impacted everyone. But kids with a mom or dad in prison have got to stay where they are, and it's really tough. But they're not forgotten. So the folks at Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree are sending each of these at-risk kids that they can manage an Angel Tree box of blessings. That includes $150 in grocery gift cards, a choice of sports equipment, soccer ball, hoops, basketball, age-appropriate Bible, like the Zondervan Pathlight Camper's Bible, some Bible study aid. If you go to hughhewitt.com and click on the Angel Tree banner, those grocery gift cards are especially critical so kids can get nutritious, healthy food. In parts of our country, food banks are overwhelmed. Here's a giant food bank spokesman from Philadelphia, from Philly Hunger, talking about their food bank.
We've seen a massive impact when it comes to volunteers. Actually, in the last 2 weeks alone, we've had over 250 volunteers drop out. We understand that people need to be safe and need to take care of themselves and their families. But with that loss in volunteers comes a loss of manpower for us. And so we're just really in need right now to make sure that the people that we serve get the food that they deserve during this rough time.
And I'd like to make sure that the children who have mom or dad in prison get one of these box of blessings. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I are going to do 5 kids. We're asking for $200 to provide the special box of blessings. At the top of hughhewitt.com, you'll find an Angel Tree banner. In America's darkest hour in a long time, let's remember these at-risk kids whom we normally send to camp, but we can't this summer. So we're going to send them a box of blessings with your help. $200, please, at hughhewitt.com. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, America. Welcome back, America. I think I'll make this a Three Dog Night day because that was always the soundtrack of summer when I was in high school and college. And some of you kiddos have never heard of Three Dog Night, but they had like 5,000 big records. Yeah. Look, I want to tell you about givingmasks.com, the new sponsor of the show. And I like it. I said yes because of what they do. There are masks all over the place, ridiculous masks, overpriced masks. And look, there's some vanity masks. I just ordered a bunch of Cleveland Brown masks, and I'm mad at the bicyclists who don't wear masks. I just am. Let me just say, if you're a bicyclist and you're not wearing a mask, why don't you join the human race and put on a mask? There, I said it. But masks are all over the place. You don't know about their quality, their durability. Do they do any good in protecting the people that are coming at you? Givingmasks.com. So it's givingmasks.com/Hugh. Sells European certified FFP2 respirators and surgical masks. They have a third-party team auditing the factory quality. They're great masks. And listen to this. For every box of masks you buy, they donate a box of masks to my favorite hospital, which is Children's Hospital of Orange County, California, where I know the head of hospital, Kim Kripe, and the head of medicine, Dr. Mignon. I served with them for 17 years on a public health board. And Children's Hospital of Orange County, although I now live in Virginia, it's just a wonderful, wonderful place. And they need these masks, right? So every time you buy masks and you go to givingmasks.com/Hugh and you buy a box of masks for yourself, they will give a box of masks to Children's Hospital of Orange County, CHOC. So they asked me, well, designate a hospital. And I got lots of I may do another one next month if we keep doing this. But if you're going to order masks, go get some good ones. Go to givingmasks.com and order some masks, but put on that /Hugh, H-U-G-H, and one box of masks for every box of masks you orders goes to CHOC in Orange County, California. And believe me, when it comes to hospitals that need and deserve help, that's them. I always tell you about No Safe Spaces. You go nosafespaces.com. I'm watching Fauda, so I'm deep into Fauda. So I'm not watching Dennis Prager right now. And I also want you to watch Patterns of Evidence. Go to patternsofevidence.com, and you, again, for both Prager and Carolla's, nosafespaces.com and patternsofevidence.com, use my name, Hugh, and you get a discount. There are things to watch out there. One of the things we watch is the market. And let me go into that this morning where the news is pretty good because, I am fighting back optimism about the world because I don't think we quite yet know. I'm very cautious about this, but I read a German study today that prevalence is much more widespread than people think, maybe way more widespread than people think. It's so virulent, so catchable that the mortality rate might be 0.37%, which is lower than people think. Still much higher than flu, but 0.37%, because it's so much more widely around. And it does not, thank God, phase children. And young adults seem to be immune. And the market, and there might be a therapeutic from Gilead that works, and there's a last-ditch effort with hydroxychloroquine. There's some options out there. We bought time. We flattened the curve. The hospitals are ready. And the market's beginning to reflect that, except in Japan, where there's some crazy stuff going on. But Hong Kong up 1%. And right now, England and Germany are open. They're up 1.33%, almost 2%. Brings me to Birch Gold Group. The national debt passed $24 trillion, and it's on its way to $30 trillion by the time we're done with this. I didn't expect to spend $10 trillion in 5 years, but we're going to end up doing that. And that's going to create inflationary pressures. It just is. Eventually, that money will accelerate. And eventually we're going to have to deal with inflation. Gold is where you ought to be diversified. I am not a gold bug. I do not believe in burying gold in your backyard. I believe in having 10% of your portfolio or your 401k, whatever, in gold. And Birch Gold Group does that for you. Send my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747, or go to hughgold.com. Unemployment claims jumped in March. April is worse. May is probably going to be just as bad. Get secure in part of your portfolio. HughGold.com, HughGold.com, or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. I'll be right back. Hey, doctors, call me 1-800-520-1234. I want to talk to you if you've seen COVID. 1-800-520-1234. Welcome back, America. That's the Boone's Farm song. Joy to the World was actually the #1 song in some year. I can't remember. Three Dog Night put on a good show. I think they're still out there. It might not be the originals. It may not. Welcome back. A big story in the Wall Street Journal this morning. I think it's big. I'm going to have on Senator Portman today and Senator Cotton. And tomorrow, Senators Cruz and who else is on tomorrow? Adam, we got two Senators Grassley and McSally and Vice President Pence tomorrow. And they've got to all focus on Phase 4. And I think this is Phase 4 is the next bill that will come out of Congress. And you'll hear it explained as, that the Democrats are mad at the Republicans are mad at the Democrats. No, they all have wants, and they all have needs, and they all have different constituencies, which means a big deal can get done. It has to get done. Has to get done. So Leader McConnell has underscored, and I mean, this is the absolute must-have. There's got to be tort reform on COVID at a minimum and perhaps on a larger basis to allow American businesses to stand up without the vultures of the plaintiff's bar descending on the bones of business. Restaurants are going to want to reopen. Governor Northam of Virginia yesterday changed his draconian order and said, okay, May 15th, we're going to start to open. You know what that means? That means the data is, outside of Virginia, outside of Northern Virginia and the Beltway, it's not that bad in Virginia. We're a lot more like Tennessee than we are D.C. and Maryland. And so Richmond and all you other places, be smart, open up. And so across the country, you're seeing outside of the really, really raging red zones, reopening. But you also say, and those businesses want to reopen, but they also don't want to get sued by plaintiffs' lawyers. When someone just alleges, I went to Joe's Burgers and I came down with COVID and they owe me $100 million, which is what the plaintiff's bar does. Now, sometimes plaintiff's bars do good things. Plaintiff's lawyers are not bad. I've been partners with plaintiff's lawyers. I have never represented on a plaintiff's side, but I have had partners who have. And if an airplane crashes, for example, the people who died and their families deserve good representation. Absolutely. But normally, no. If you're seeing an ad for someone on TV, not a good thing. There are some very rare exceptions, but if they're advertising on TV, not a good thing. That's boosterism for people to find a grievance and bring it to court and try and destroy a company. So Leader McConnell has said they've got to have tort immunity. Now, that doesn't excuse gross negligence or departure from best practices. So if a restaurant isn't wiping down its tables, maybe they'll be liable. I think they ought to just collect every single COVID case, preempt the state law, and put it in one district in the federal court system. Whether it's the Northern District of California or the Southern District of Texas or the Eastern District of New York, I don't care. I really don't care. Trial judges are not particularly political. We need trial judges all over the country that are really experienced lawyers, because trials are not ideological. Circuits and Supreme Courts, that's where the ideology is. Trial judges just need to be good. So that's what Mitch wants. And a lot of us want a national security buildup to respond to China. That's what I want. A lot of senators want that. They want an expended. I'll talk to Tom Cotton about that next hour. We've got a new frigate, and we've ordered 10 of them. Well, let's order 50 of them and put the payment down, open 2 more shipyards in addition to the one in Wisconsin that's going to build the first 10, and build the shipyard. We can do that. That's not hard to do. We did that in World War II. Open up a shipyard in 2 months. You just go into an existing place like Ashtabula or Erie, Pennsylvania, or any place in Michigan in the Detroit River somewhere and just say, we're taking over here and we're building a shipyard and it will be done. And we're building the FFGX. And that is, the design was begun under Obama. It's not play. We just need a lot of these frigates. They're porcupine full of missiles. And they'll go to the first island chain of Taiwan and Japan and the Philippines, and they'll just push back on China. And this is this is Cold War 2.0, friends. The mask is off. In fact, let me just remind you what the president said at the Lincoln Memorial, cut number 1.
What they really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problem, essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? In other words, they knew they had a problem. I think they were embarrassed by the problem, very embarrassed. And, the case could be made. They said, hey, look, this is going to have a huge impact on China, and we might as well let the rest of the world, because...
Because what? Because if we don't have them suffer, we're going to be the only ones suffering, and they will get an advantage. Trump has got the Chinese Communist Party's number. Trump has Xi's number. That's why I think Trump's going to win in November. This is all going to be about, what do we do about China? I mean, take off your anti-Trump lens, take off all your anti-Trump hysteria. Do you want Joe Biden in the basement and that team of appeasers back in the White House? Hey, Iran, here's a bunch of money. Please be nice. Here, China, here's a bunch of money. Please be nice. Or do you want Team Trump, led by the president? I want Trump, because the mask is off. So in this phase 4, I want a lot of money for defense. I want to rebuild the triad. Yeah, there's that word again, the triad. I want a 355-ship Navy, and I want the tort reform that Mitch wants. But guess what? Democrats are going to want something too. And in any negotiation, you got to give both sides. Wall Street Journal exclusive. California is the first state to borrow from the federal government to make unemployment payment. Illinois and Connecticut receive approvals for federal loans of $12.6 billion and $11 billion respectively, $1.1 billion. So Illinois needs $12.6 billion. Connecticut needs $1.1 billion. The Golden State, California, borrowed $348 million. So not much compared to Illinois. Is just a freaking basket case. And right behind it, all right, you've got Connecticut. I've always told you those are the big three. Illinois, Connecticut, and California, the worst run states in America. And the Golden State went in there and they borrowed $348 million. Nothing compared to Illinois, which got $12.6 billion. So why am I bringing this up? Because the states that are making these loans are going to need them forgiven. That's what they're going to push for. Notice that they're blue states, California, Illinois, and Connecticut. You got 6 blue senators. You got, 60 members of the House. They're going to need these loans forgiven. That's what they're going to get. I mean, they can't pay these loans back. So all of a sudden, there's enormous need on the Democrat side. So what do they need? They need, this is, by the way, you don't have to figure out, you don't have to come up with a formula. Nancy Pelosi is not going to, this is unemployment money. This has got nothing to do with their badly run pensions. Then you attach some bankruptcy authority, which they don't have to use, and you got a deal forming. As soon as I saw this morning, Illinois, $12 billion. California's just getting started. This is going to be what they deal with. They're going to put on the table and say, we need you to forgive these loans, Democrats. And Mitch McConnell's going to say, we need you to protect businesses and we need a national defense buildup. And President Trump's going to want a payroll tax. Okay, there's a deal here. The room where it happens. Can we bring that up, Adam? Just bring it up and I'll talk about what's going to happen here. I'll just tell you what's going to happen. You're not going to see this until it's done. Until it's done, they're going to be yelling at each other. And then a San Francisco Democrat, a Kentucky gentleman, a Hollywood producer, and a New York developer are going to walk into a room. That San Francisco Democrat comes out of a Baltimore machine. That Kentuckian is the best leader of the United States Senate in my lifetime. And they're going to sit down with Steve Mnuchin and the president. They might have another New Yorker, Larry Kudlow. And they're going to say, what do you want? And Nancy Pelosi's going to say, I need billions for California, Illinois, Connecticut. And Mitch is going to lean back and say, liability protection. The president's going to talk a lot and he's going to want payroll reduction. And then a note's going to come in from Tom Cotton and the Serious Defense Caucus. Say, we need a bunch of ships. And that's when they do the deal, because it's got to be done. That's what's going to happen. 1-800-520-1234. I just tell you the way it is, America. Can I play for you something that just astonished? I think this was Sunday night. This is Don Lemon. Look, CNN has lost its mind. I have friends over there. I have people that I respect a great deal, and they're still there, and I still respect them. But it's like a derangement syndrome has set in. This is Don Lemon, I think, on Sunday night, cut number 3. But stop. The context is he's addressing camera, apparently without a prompter. In his mind, he's talking to President Trump. I like Don. I've worked with Don a lot back in the days before I went to NBC. But this is just nuts. Don Lemon directly into camera, cut number 4.
Boy, oh boy. That's leadership. That's compassion. It's too bad that President Trump can't show either. By the way, what is it about President Obama that really gets under your skin? Is it because he's smarter than you? Better educated? Made it on his own? Didn't need daddy's help? His wife is more accomplished? Better looking? I don't know. What is it? What is it about him? That he's a black man that's accomplished, became president? That he punked you on the whole birth certificate thing? What is it about him? Just wondering.
Does anyone have any idea what that's about? Adam, I hear you're laughing in your voice. His wife is more accomplished, better looking? What is this, 3rd grade CNN? What in the world is that? That is Trump derangement syndrome. That is Trump derangement syndrome. And this, hey friends, is Relief Factor. All right. 8 miles yesterday, running on the street, getting honked at because I won't go on the bike path anymore. Why? Because these crazy bike pathers don't have masks on. I went past 20 of them, 19 didn't have masks. They said I'm running in the street. People honk at you when you run in the street when there's a perfectly good bike path, which I normally use when it's not the age of the plague. But I'll tell you what, I did 8 miles yesterday. I'm not fast. I'm a trundler, but I'm done with the bicyclists. And I shake my head at each of them, and they look at me, and the people honk at me, and they say, get out of the road. But I got my Relief Factor, so I don't care. I just shake my head and keep trundling along. If I am right, if the scientists are right, if body mass index is right, if that's the indicator of mortality, highest indicator of likely mortality, you got to get in shape. And you got to start today with walking. And that means you're going to have some of the normal aches and pains that come with exercise. That's why you need ReliefFactor.com. $19.95 gets you started. Get there and get right back here with Drucker. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Here's David Drucker. David, good morning. How are you? Is the Drucker family well?
We're all well.
Good.
Ready to get out of the house, but we're well.
Well, I'm beginning to think that the way out of this is to encourage people under 45 who are healthy to get out and go to work and play, and those who are over 70 with a comorbidity to stay at home, and those in between to make your best call. But it's the rest of it isn't tenable. And I'm studying the data, David. That's what the data shows me. What is your own personal operating theory on this?
Well, look, I've always believed that this was sustainable for a while, that it wasn't sustainable long term. I think if you look at how fast Congress acted, despite some bickering in between, and how much money they appropriated, it was quite a lot. And you start to realize there's only so much money the U.S. government can come up with as a bridge from where we were to where we hope to get. And people aren't even considering the trillions or hundreds of billions that the Federal Reserve has injected on its own into the economy, and we're still where we are. And I think one of the reasons, Hugh, that you're seeing states move, some states, both led by Democrats and Republicans, to move to reopen in some fashion ahead of schedule is because people are getting restless, and as they sort of absorb the health part of the crisis and deal with that, the people that are still healthy realize that they have to earn a living, and they do not want to see everything they've built up tear down. And so they're looking for ways to operate responsibly. And one of the reasons I think that the shut-in worked is people were willing to do it. And what we're seeing now is people looking for flexibility. And I think that's why you've seen in California the announcement you saw, in Virginia the announcement you saw, in other states on down the line.
Because there's also science here. And I've been reading the Telegraph this morning. They think BMI, body mass index, is the key indicator. And I just think it's pretty obvious that if you're over 70, you have a comorbidity, stay home. And if you're under 45 and you're fit and you've got kids, you can go out. I mean, you might get it, but you're not going to die from it. In the overwhelming majority, it's like car accidents at this point. And so go forth and live and encourage people. But I want to ask you about the deal that looks to me to be on the table. Wall Street Journal reporting this morning. California yesterday borrowed $348 million. That sounds like a lot for their unemployment fund. Illinois borrowed $12.6 billion, and Connecticut borrowed $1.1 billion from the Treasury for their unemployment claims. These are chits on the table that will need to be forgiven. This is what Pelosi is going to have to put on the table as her must-have, David. Agree or disagree?
I think it's very likely. And, I think that the negotiations for this next tranche of coronavirus aid, I think the negotiations are going to be more involved. I think Republicans are going to ask for a lot more than they did previously. And, so we'll see where it goes. I don't actually think there's going to be anything that quickly because, I'm talking to Republicans over the past couple of weeks. They want to see where the money goes that's been appropriated and how it works or how it doesn't work. They've told me they want the next round to be sort of a more informed investment so that they can help what needs to be helped. Obviously, Democrats feel the same way, but they have a different set of priorities. I just don't think with all the money that's gone out the door and the debt now at $24.6 trillion versus a $20 trillion economy, that Senate Republicans at the very least are going to be willing to move as quickly as they did prior, at least in the way that Democrats would want in the House.
What I'm pointing to is that each side will have must-haves, like Leader McConnell says, tort reform, so that the plaintiffs' lawyers don't descend on the bones of businesses. There's a defense build-up here. But I look at what California, Connecticut, and Illinois have done. They are indicating real need, and it's not pension fund. It's unemployment claims. So they're running up loans that will need to be forgiven, which will be markers that the Republicans can rely on for giving those loans. It will not go to the state pension funds. It won't go to pad public employee union coffers. It'll go to repay the unemployment loans. I think that's a great marker. And the blue states, those are 3 blue states, 6 senators, and 60 members, maybe more than 60 members. That's going to be a hell of a block asking for help, David.
Yeah, and look, that makes sense. I just think if you look at the negotiations over the second round of small business loan money, it took about, a week to 10 days, and that seemed very targeted, very defined. It didn't seem like anybody should have any argument over it. but there was still a negotiation and a debate. And so I think that even with some of these markers, as you've described them, well, it makes some common sense. There are going to be negotiations around the edges that will, make this thing a little bit more involved, I think, than the first few bills that passed.
Absolutely. And every lobbyist in town. I think the only people driving down Constitution Avenue are lobbyists. That's the only people who are.
It's been very busy for them, and whenever the government spends money, people, they want a piece of it. They also want to influence how the money's spent. So they have not slowed down one bit. And
No.
with the Senate back in, I think some of them will find a way to make their way to Capitol Hill, and standing a few feet apart, 6 feet apart, will.
You betcha. They're up there and they're working. David M. Drucker on Twitter, America. Don't go anywhere. Hour number 2 straight ahead. Tom Cotton, Rob Portman in hour 3. Lots ahead on today's Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.
Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. To all of my 400 affiliates across the globe, great to have you with us. I am Hugh Hewitt in the Beltway, where the death toll in America has reached almost 70,877 new deaths yesterday. We're on our way to over 100,000 deaths, and the question must be asked, why did this all happen? And increasingly, people are looking at the People's Republic of China. I'm joined by Byron York. You see him on Fox News. He writes for the Washington Examiner. Good morning, Byron. Everyone well in the York family?
They are. Thanks for asking, you.
I am wondering, before I get to the specific question, where the data is leading you, because I know you study the numbers like I do. It's leading me to the idea that we ought to be encouraging the 45 and younger crowd who are fit to be out and about, go to work, go to the pool, open things for them. And if you're over 70 and you've got a comorbidity, stay home, and in between, use your best judgment. What's Byron York think?
Well, I think judgment is the key word there. I do think that if you look at maps, I mean, it's such a huge country. There's so many areas in which there are relatively low levels of cases, low levels of hospitalizations, low levels of deaths, and there's simply no reason that these places should remain locked down for much longer if when people come out, they use distancing, they wear masks, they take precautions, they space themselves out at businesses, that sort of thing. So,
Byron, I actually think that this summer, I don't know if you have small children, you might be the right age to have small. I think you can open swimming pools and have teenager and young adult guards and let moms and dads come and then cut it off at 45. I just think that they might get the virus, but very few of them will even notice it or feel bad.
Well, I think the 45 thing is a guideline. I mean, it's not. I just don't think we can have some sort of law or ruling that says everyone over 45 must stay inside.
No. It's guidelines. You can't. It's unconstitutional to do it the other way.
And so, I think what's going to happen is, I think people who are older, and I think people who do have underlying conditions or comorbidities, will do it on their own. They will remain cautious. Maybe they won't do exactly what they're doing under these lockdowns, but they're not going to start running out. They're not going to go to a movie. They're not going to go to a convention. They're not going to be at a bar standing next to somebody, screaming over the music. They're not going to do that. So I think that I'm hoping, and I actually kind of feel confident that we will see a lot of fairly responsible behavior when this happens.
We will figure it out. We will, and of course, Darwin's law will come. The funny Darwin's law. When we see people do dumb things on the internet, we'll see people do dumb things. But folks, I think we're a common sense country. Now, I want to ask you about China and about the media. This is what the president said. The most important thing he said at the Lincoln Memorial is this: cut number one.
What they really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problem, essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? In other words, they knew they had a problem. I think they were embarrassed by the problem, very embarrassed. And, the case could be made. They said, hey, look, this is going to have a huge impact on China, and we might as well let the rest of the world, because...
Stop right there. We might as well let the rest of the world. He didn't say it, but it was suffer. Byron York, so what's that all about? And the case could be made are the two most important things he said in that entire interview. What do you think he's saying?
Well, I think it's pretty well put, as a matter of fact. He's saying he's not saying that this is some sort of bioweapon developed by the People's Liberation Army. He's suggesting it was an accident, got out of control of the Chinese authorities. I talked to a senator who's been following this very closely a while back. And he said, in January you could notice, if you were watching the Chinese closely, you could notice the difference between the no problem, everything's fine, nothing to see here, public statements of the Chinese government, and the increasingly draconian actions they took to lock down Wuhan. I think it was really fascinating, the president also talked about limiting domestic travel in China, but not limiting international travel, really, which let this thing loose upon the world without warning.
And the only explanation for that is to adjust the comparative disadvantage, though it is equally shared across the globe. And a communist thinks that way. A Westerner does not, but a communist thinks that way.
And we're seeing just this extraordinary, I know you look at the statistical website each day, and it's as if today China has no problem. I mean, the other day they said they had 2 deaths. Now, do you believe that?
No, of course, it's just a lie. It's like Iran. Yep.
And so you look at all of the statistics of cases per million, hospitalizations per million, deaths per million, and you cannot compare China to anything. We don't even have numbers for that. And look, it's a devastating picture in a lot of advanced Western European countries. Look at the numbers for Spain and France and Italy and Belgium and the Netherlands. I mean, it's just UK. It's amazing, these numbers. But these are transparent societies. We can trust what we're seeing there, even though we know it's hard to collect perfect statistics on this particular thing. But you look at China, Russia too. I mean, you have no idea what these numbers are. So the idea of citing them as a model for anything is crazy.
It is. The Politico article yesterday was just propaganda. I couldn't believe it. Let me play for you now the media, because I think this campaign is going to come down to China in the media, by the way. This is Don Lemon. I like Don. I think this is Sunday night. It wasn't last night, but it was already up on the web yesterday afternoon, so I think it was Sunday night. He's looking into camera. He's talking about President Trump and President Obama, and he says this, cut number 3.
Boy, oh boy, that's leadership. That's compassion. It's too bad that President Trump can't show either. By the way, what is it about President Obama that really gets under your skin? Is it because he's smarter than you? Better educated? Made it on his own? Didn't need daddy's help? His wife is more accomplished? Better looking? I don't know. What is it? What is it about him? That he's a black man that's accomplished, became president? That he punked you on the whole birth certificate thing? What is it about him? Just wondering.
Byron, what is that?
We see this a lot in the media, and we were seeing it before the coronavirus emergency, but with these direct addresses to President Trump. You see it with some media figures like Lemon. You see it on Twitter, these sort of direct responses. And this was just all trolling. I mean, it was just obviously all trolling.
Notice me. It's just put on a shirt that says, "Please notice me, President Trump."
Well, I do think that they want to get under, because look, the president lets people get under his skin. There's no doubt about it. Maybe he does it strategically, but he does let them get under his skin, and maybe he'll tweet about what a loser Don Lemon is or something like that, and perhaps it raises Don Lemon's profile, I guess.
Maybe they get a bonus. You think Zucker gives a bonus if I've known Jeff for 5 years, not well, but maybe he gives a bonus if Greg Williams, the old New Orleans State defensive coordinator, had a bounty for whenever people got injured, allegedly. Maybe there's a bounty at CNN for getting the president's dander up.
But there are a lot of people now who are trying. They want it. It's in their business interest to have the president denounce them. Either their bosses want to see it, their customers, their audience wants to see it, whatever. For example, the group of anti-Trump former Republicans, the Lincoln Project, came out with a new ad yesterday, and it shows America as a devastated country. It's called "Morning in America" with a U, and Trump tweeted about it. Trump tweeted about it overnight, and they are so excited this morning you would not believe it. It's just wonderful. Trump tweeted about what a bunch of losers they all were, and all the losing campaigns they had worked on, which is actually correct. And they're just beside themselves with happiness this morning. So there are people who, for audience reasons, for business reasons, want to have the president denounce them, and sometimes the president goes along and gives them what they want.
But Byron, what's interesting, we don't have time. I'll talk about this later. Twitter's not a real world. It doesn't have any impact on public opinion at all whatsoever. Nothing. It's just all confirmation bias. Oh, well. Byron York is worth following on Twitter because he's not about confirmation bias. He's about the news. Byron York on Twitter. I'll be right back, America. 1-800-520-1234. Thank you, Byron. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. 22 minutes after the hour, America. My niece is actually in lockdown Madrid. Doing fine. She's 21 years old. I mean, the data is the data. It is very, very rare for anyone under 25 to suffer other than flu-like symptoms from COVID. It's very, very rare. You know what isn't rare? GivingMasks.com isn't rare. A lot of people need masks. They're buying them from GivingMask.com. I want you to do that because if you use GivingMasks.com, GivingMask, plural.com/Hugh, for every box of masks that you order, they're going to donate the same amount to Children's Hospital of Orange County. So use my name, GivingMasks/Hugh. Let me also remind you that we cannot send kids to camp this summer from Prison Fellowship, the Angel Tree. Thousands of you do that every year. We can't do that this year. So this year we are sending boxes of blessings to those kids with a note from their mom or dad who is incarcerated, sometimes sadly both, with $150 worth of good food coupons and some sports equipment. Just something to brighten their summer because we can't send them to camp. It's $200 a kid. Can you help us out? It's at the very top of HughHewitt.com, Prison Fellowship. You'll see it. Angel Tree banner. The grocery gift cards are especially crucial. Get some nutritious, healthy food and some sports equipment to make the mean streets a little bit less mean. A little more soccer, a little more hoops, a little more throwing the football around. They'll be fine as best they can. It's not camp. We can't substitute camp, but we can help them if you will help us. HughHewitt.com, the very top, Angel Tree banner. Let's check the markets, shall we? Brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian. There with Sierra Pacific. They lend money. They're not a broker. They're not a call center. They never sell your information. They will give you no bad advice. They will not tell you to refinance unless it makes perfect sense. When you do refinance because it makes sense and you can lower your payment and save money, they might encourage you to put half of the money you're saving back into prepaying the loan so that you pay it off in 23 years opposed to 30. The 10-year Treasury's at 0.64%. Look, light crude's creeping up, friends, at $22 a barrel this morning. That's good. 0.64 is above where it was last week. That's good. The mortgage industry is still the best rates ever, 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 ever. So refinance now. Overnight, Japan went down, but right now with the markets open in England and Germany, they're both robustly up by more than 1%. I don't know what's going to happen today. Yesterday, the Dow went up 26 points. The NASDAQ rallied late with 105 points. The S&P's up 12. Yesterday, Amazon started down and they ended up $30 to the north. And I expect that they've shaken off. They've begun to absorb what Jeff Bezos is saying and what other big tech companies are doing, which is they're using the fact that they're making money for the public good, for the good of the company. They're buying infrastructure. They're not banking the profits and sending out dividends or doing buybacks of the stock. Good for them. I think Bezos is a genius. I know the president don't like him. I think he's a genius. Well, so, AndrewandTodd.com. Get started on saving money on your home. Let's talk with Dick in Dayton on line 2. Good morning, Dick. What's on your mind?
Well, good morning, Hugh. I just wanted to tell you that where I work, the home improvement business, you would never know about this virus. We have had people come in so bad. I mean, it's just like a zoo. But now the new rules we have is most of the people are going to have to wear masks. Like
Good.
Employees.
Good.
I'm usually outside. I do the...
Dick, wear a mask, please. It assures the older people. I appreciate the call. Wearing a mask assures the older people. You're giving peace of mind to older people. Kathy, Scranton. All things Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton in Scranton. Hi, Kathy. You got to be quick.
Okay. Remember when Obama said that?
No, stop it, Kathy. Goodbye. Tom in Utah. How are you, Tom? You got to be quick.
Hey, Hugh, I remember back in January, maybe it was Admiral Stavridis or somebody you were talking with, and you were saying how devastating this was going to be to the China economy. And I swear I remember you talking about how, you thought they might let it go.
I did.
Basically.
I wish I'd been right about Bernie and wrong about the virus, but it was the other way around. I made two big bets in January. I thought Bernie was going to be the Democratic nominee, and I knew the virus was going to escape and be devastating. And I said it again and again and again. I bat 500. I just wish it had been the other way around, but I was right. Thank you for remembering, Tom. Don't go anywhere. Coming back with Michael Shear of the New York Times. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. 33 minutes after the hour on Three Dog Night Day. Why? Because summer is approaching, and they were the soundtrack of my summers when I was a kid. Welcome back. I'm joined by Michael Shear of the New York Times, one of the smart guys. I have three regular guests from the Times, Peter Baker, Michael, and Nick Kristof when he can break away. And they're smart people, and I have them on not to talk about the news so much as their general view. Good morning, Michael. How are you? Is everyone in family Shear fine?
Good morning. Yeah, everybody's great. A little stir crazy as I think everybody else is in the country, but yeah, we're good.
Good. Now, Michael, I don't know how old your kids are, and people sometimes don't talk about them on the air, and that's fine. But I am curious. I look at the data, and I try and figure out what guidance ought the government to be giving. And I think they've got to start to encourage, as opposed to discourage people, to do that which is safe versus that which is unsafe. And in the positive sense, I think it would be perfectly safe if swimming pools opened up and were guarded, as I used to do in my youth, by 17 to 22-year-olds and 24-year-olds, and parents who were younger with young kids went, because it just seems to me this disease does not hit the young and the in shape.
Well, look, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what the medical, I don't know what the medical implications of swimming together would be. It doesn't hit the young as hard, it seems, but there have been reports of some children getting pretty sick as well. My kids are 18 and almost 21, and we went on a walk along a very beautiful trail through kind of the rural parts of Virginia the other day. Lots of people biking, though distance from each other, and that seems safe. And I think you're right. I think we have to be able to start doing get out a little bit if it's safe, and to the extent that it's safe, I think everybody should.
Michael, back in the prehistoric age, when I was 18 and 21, you could drink beer at 18 in Ohio in the 70s. And so walking with my dad on a nature trail at 18 and 21 would not have been my preferred activity.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Only one of my two kids managed to come with me on that, I'll be honest. The other one took a pass. So,
and I'm just saying to the teenagers of America, I feel your pain. I know what you want to be doing. As someone said on a call yesterday, the least socially distant demographic in America are college students.
Well, that's so true. And I tell you, one of my older one, will start his third year in college in the fall. My 18-year-old will be a freshman, and I've said that before too. That these are the most social. This is the most social time in your life, is when you go and live in a college dorm, and it's just killing them. It really is like it's just hard to watch. I mean, it's hard for all of us, but for to watch two kids that are in that part of their life, all they want to do is be with other people their age.
So, Michael, spitball with me a little bit, because, you and I are not doctors, nor did we stay at a Holiday Inn. But I've interviewed two college professors because I'm very interested in what colleges are going to do.
Okay.
And their reality is their staff and their professors are older, and many are vulnerable. Most of their students are not. They're generally a lot fitter than we were when I was in school in the middle 70s, and you were when you were in school in the middle 80s or the 90s. And
Right.
they're fitness obsessed, actually. That doesn't mean that they're in obesity and comorbidities, and some students are fragile. But if you did things that would violate the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, like say to your 60-year-old professors, stay home, and say to your staff workers, stay home, but the young people come to work, college could work. Are we going to deny our kids their college years because we can't say the obvious thing?
Well, I hope not. I will tell you, my wife works at a major Virginia university in the enrollment, what they call the enrollment office, the admissions office, and they're absolutely frantic about trying to reopen. I mean, they're trying to figure out, obviously without perfect information at this point, because we don't know what it's going to be like, but they want to reopen. They want to figure out how to do this. Can you do it with all students? Can you do it with some of the students? You have a certain amount of dorm rooms, most of which are, pack students in traditionally pretty closely, sharing bathrooms, sharing rooms. Do you have to modify that? Do you put some of your classes online, not others? I mean, it's a real mess. But I can tell you, living with two college students and somebody who works at a university. It's kind of all we talk about here.
Oh, and the reality is the network effects of college are the great value of college. And the classes are useful as well. And the time spent learning how to actually converse and interact as an adult is valuable. We've basically made college an extension of adolescence. And that's okay. That's what the society chose to do over the course of 50 years. But now we can't just shut it off. And I think the reality is, again, I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend to be one. I look at the data and we need an exception to ADEA because what colleges need to do to avoid liability is not keep the kids out of the dorm. They'll be fine. A few of them will get sick, but a few of them fall off of roofs too in the course of their college years. I've been a faculty member for 30 years. I know what happens at colleges. People get hurt sometimes. They get sick. They also have outbreaks of depression. They have also outbreaks of overdose. It happens at college. I know that. I think we can run that risk. We just can't bring in older, vulnerable people or the medically fragile. We just have to make distinction.
Well, and I think one of the other things that's going to the distinctions to be made is where the college is located and what the situation with the virus is in that area. There are going to be places, even in Virginia, my wife, there are places where universities that are more remote and in places where the virus hasn't spread broadly to the extent that we know, they're planning on reopening sooner than the universities that are located in hotspot areas. And I think you're right about what college is all about and the value of college. And I think that part of the thing that all of these universities are grappling with is that, these high tuition rates that people have been willing to pay, well, they're willing to pay it not just because of the classes, the academic classes, they're willing to pay it for the whole experience. And that's what gets lost, and that's what I think people aren't going to be wanting to pay for if all you're doing is getting the experience from, of sitting in classes in the basement of your house.
Now, you just gave me, in fact, that's so obvious when you contrast, for example, NYU, where I've had friends' children go, and Miami of Ohio, where one of my kids went. I mean, you basically can't get to Miami of Ohio. It took forever to get to Miami of Ohio. You have to land in Kentucky, drive through Indiana, and you get to Ohio eventually in the Red Hawk land. Great university, but it is, talk about away from places. NYU is the worst. And Columbia must have the hardest problems, right?
Right. And look, I think the one caveat to the Miami of Ohio, example is, there is data to suggest that the virus is still spreading widely, and that there are places that maybe are more susceptible to it, or more have it in more prevalence than we know. We just don't know yet because everybody's been staying in their house and hiding. And so the question is, would you find that Miami of Ohio becomes a hot spot if you do allow, thousands of kids to come living together? And I think that's just what we don't know yet. And I think we have to look to the governors and the federal government to guide us along that line.
We also have to define what a hotspot is, Michael. I was reading the Telegraph this morning, and they have a great story out of Germany. 10 times more people than previously thought have acquired immunity, according to a study in Germany. They put the fatality rate at 0.37%. They also have a story that BMI is actually the greatest indicator of likely mortality from COVID. And it just sweeps through young people without leaving, they don't get shot. An older person's like getting shot, and, it might not kill you, but you're still going to it's going to hurt. So I just begin to, New York is different because they're going to be carriers through the whole city. But it does seem to me if you can keep kids on campus, you've got a safe island.
Yeah, I guess, although I will tell you, Hugh, one of my colleagues at the time, who's 26 or 7 or 8, I can't remember. He's young. He's a young reporter. Got it and was basically flattened for 5.5 weeks. Basically, I mean, he didn't end up in the hospital on a ventilator, but he was really, really, really sick.
Oh yeah.
And he had no, he wasn't obese. He wasn't, unhealthy. He didn't have any underlying conditions. So it does concern me as a parent of somebody who's, got to make this decision about whether to send the kids to live in a dorm in a few months. Like it's a hard decision.
You don't want this. You don't want meningitis, right?
Right.
But that 5 week down is not the same as hospitalization. And I think if we can get good data, parents will make the choice to send children. And they will tell them to scrub their rooms. And like last time I flew, which was 8 weeks ago, wiping down my seat and doing all. Well, I mean, don't you want to get them?
Will they, Hugh? I mean, they're college kids, right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah,
you
you're
tell
right.
them all you want.
Well, you know what the difference is? When my daughter was in college and they had that co-ed floor, the girls' part of it was always pristine, and the boys,
Of course.
It's poisonous, right? So,
right.
So, good luck on that. Are you doing any writing on this? Are you doing any reflecting or reporting on this? Or are you still just doing politics? Because I think it's an unlimited area of reporters with data.
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of writing on COVID-19 and both the politics of it and the spread of it, and looking at NIH and CDC and HHS and all of that. I obviously am interested in this college question, and I raised it at a sort of planning meeting this week with some of my colleagues, and there are Times reporters who cover education and are definitely focused on this question, because I think a lot of America, people who have kids in college, are all thinking about it.
I also tell you, I was thinking about college presidents. They are on the brink of bankruptcy, many of them, if they do not bring these kids back. It is a crisis that is existential for American higher education. No one ever told them the tuition machine would turn off someday.
Well, for private colleges, that's a big thing. For public universities, like the one that my wife works for, I think the only answer, if it's as bad as we think it's going to be in terms of kids, withdrawing and that kind of thing, the only answer is going to be federal bailout for the states to help, to help. And this is going to be one of the biggest costs that the states have, and I think that's going to be an interesting debate to watch on Capitol Hill.
It's another counter in that room where it happens, where Mitch McConnell needs liability insurance for business, Trump wants payroll taxes, and Nancy Pelosi is going to want the insurance funds replenished and the education system refunded. Michael Shear, always a pleasure. Follow him at Shear M on Twitter. Follow me to the next segment. Don't forget as well that if you want to be entertained, nosafespaces.com. Use my code SALE25 to get the best deal on the Dennis Prager, Adam Carolla movie. Also, patternsofevidence.com. Did the Exodus happen? Did other things that are recorded in the Bible happen? Patternsofevidence.com. Use my name, Hugh. It's on demand, 10% off. And then don't forget, relieffactor.com. Where's my bag of relieffactor.com? All right, so 10-9-8. Last 3 days. 10-mile run, 9-mile walk, 8-mile run. I think I'm going back out today because the weather is gorgeous in the Beltway. And so you do it when it's not raining. ReliefFactor.com keeps me in the game. Bad back and all. Rotator cuff doesn't really matter much. I just can't lift stuff. But the ReliefFactor.com, support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. Take it every day. $19.95 gets you started. Join the tens of thousands of people who use one supplement only, which is the ReliefFactor.com package. Don't forget Honor Bound Coffee. Honor Bound Coffee. You ought to be drinking your coffee from Honor Bound Coffee, because 100% of the profits from Honor Bound Coffee go to support military families. Make the switch during sequester. HonorBoundCoffee.com. Coming right back, America. Senator Tom Cotton talks China with me after the break. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, welcome, everybody. Healthy and Team Cotton.
Good morning to you. It's good to be on with you. Yep, everyone good here. Hope the same for you and all your listeners.
Thank you. I want to play for you the president at the Lincoln Memorial and then talk China with you. This is 2 nights ago, cut number 1.
What they really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problem, essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? In other words, they knew they had a problem. I think they were embarrassed by the problem, very embarrassed. And, the case could be made. They said, hey, look, this is going to have a huge impact on China, and we might as well let the rest of the world, because...
You know, what he didn't say was suffered, Tom Cotton. What do you think he meant by that, Senator?
Hugh, I think what the president was getting at is what I've been pointing out now for several weeks. Whatever the origins of this virus, whether it originated at that lab through an accidental breach, or it truly was some kind of direct animal-human transmission out in the wild, it is clear that the Chinese Communist Party knew how serious this virus was by mid or late December at the very latest. They knew it was highly contagious, they knew it was deadly, and they intentionally left international air travel open out of China. They pressured other countries not to impose travel restrictions. They pressured the WHO to oppose them because they did not want to see a relative decline in their own power versus the rest of the world, and especially the United States. If China was going to be crippled, they did not want the rest of the world to remain strong. I think that is obvious if you follow the timelines here and you use a little bit of common sense to follow the inherent logic of events.
It is clearly that what the president was saying is that they were going to spread the comparative disadvantage of having a virus-inflicted economy because they're communists and they don't care, Tom Cotton. That's what a lot of the media in the West seems to have forgotten. They actually do not care.
Yeah. So Hugh, for anyone who thinks that is too wicked to imagine, remember, as you say, these are communists, and the modern Chinese Communist Party is responsible for the deaths of 65 million of its own people. If you think for a moment that Xi Jinping would not be willing to inflict a pandemic on the world and be responsible for the deaths of a few 100,000 of foreigners to maintain his relative power in the world, you are naive.
Naive or purposefully blinded by TDS, to which I bring the American media now to put before you. There's a story in Politico that could have been manufactured in Beijing. All over the media, I see people parroting PRC, CCP talking points. Do you see this, Senator Cotton, and what do you say to those people?
So Hugh, I think you could put it in a bigger context than just the Chinese talking points, although it is true that you see in a lot of mainstream media outlets, essentially, whatever Donald Trump says or does, the opposite must be the party line. Now, since the president is criticizing China, since he continued to point out correctly that the virus started in China, then the party line in our media is this is an outrage, it's xenophobic, it's racist, we must oppose it. We must praise China, we must become even China apologists. You don't see it just with China, you see that across the board, that anything this president says or does, the opposite must be the party line for the media, but it's particularly appalling when you see our free media becoming apologists for and defenders of the Chinese communist regime in Beijing.
With millions of people interned because of their religious belief, it's wildly disconnected from reality, Senator. I don't even know how to capture how wildly disconnected American media has become from reality and from history. But I look at the Pulitzer board they were awarded yesterday, and I understand why. It's just populated at the very top through all the award giving and all the network deciding tree of the branch that they hate Trump. It's distorted all of American media.
Yeah, some of the Pulitzer Prizes yesterday were pretty amazing, to include the one that the New York Times won for their notorious and infamous 1619 project, which many historians, not conservative historians, have denounced and which they had to run major corrections for. The Pulitzer Board leans pretty far out there to the left. No, not mistaken, it's the same institution that gave Walter Duranty a Pulitzer Prize for his apologist reporting from Moscow for the Soviet Union.
Well, I'll tell you, if you go look at the board, Lee Bollinger's on it, president of Columbia University. He taught me media law at the University of Michigan years ago. I think he's the most conservative one on there. And he's a liberal, hard, classic liberal kind of guy, ACLU kind of guy. But I mean, it's just wildly to the left. And I think all of American media is just diseased by TDS, mainstream American media. Senator Tom Cotton, good to talk to you. The media matters. People are going to excerpt my conversation with Tom Cotton and beat us both up. We wear that as marks of honor. Because Emo is over there busily typing as we speak. We don't care. We know what the disease is. It's TDS, and it's everywhere in the American media. Coming right back with Mollie Hemingway talking about Don Lemon. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt inside the ReliefFactor.com studio, inside of the Beltway, joined by the Federalist, Mollie Hemingway. Increasingly a must-read voice every day. Mollie, good morning. How is everyone on Team Hemingway?
We are doing very well. Hope you're doing the same.
Yes, indeed. Glad to have you. Mollie, you're not a media critic. You're right about everything, but I want to talk about the media with you today. And I want to start by paying Don Lemon. I think it's Sunday night. It was definitely not last night. I think it's Sunday night. But he's talking into the camera and he begins to address President Trump directly. Cut number 3, please.
Boy, oh boy. That's leadership. That's compassion. It's too bad that President Trump can't show either. By the way, what is it about President Obama that really gets under your skin? Is it because he's smarter than you? Better educated? Made it on his own? Didn't need daddy's help? His wife is more accomplished? Better looking? I don't know. What is it? What is it about him? That he's a black man that's accomplished, became president? That he punked you on the whole birth certificate thing? What is it about him? Just wondering.
His wife is more accomplished, better looking. What is this, Mollie?
I think it's probably a sign that you've lost some kind of control over your own reality when you think that Donald Trump doesn't like Barack Obama because Melania Trump isn't pretty. I mean, this is a supermodel. It's just a great example of derangement syndrome. And also, why is this even needing to be said on TV? Why is what Don Lemon thinks about the relative beauty of two women on a news program? And this is the type of behavior that is on these stations all the time and is treated as if it were normal. And it's not normal, it's not healthy, and it's ridiculous. It's embarrassing.
Mollie, in 30 years of broadcasting, I have never compared two women for their beauty. It's so unprofessional as to be breathtaking.
But Hugh, it's not just that. It's the idea that Melania Trump, an actual supermodel, is not pretty.
You know, I hadn't even thought about that because I'm so stunned by now. Does this objectively impact the credibility of all CNN?
It would if they had a ton of credibility right now. I mean, they're coming out of several years of perpetuating and perpetrating on the American people a hoax that Donald Trump was a traitor who colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election. That was something that really destroyed their credibility. And they've never taken responsibility for their role, whether it was whether they knowingly allowed themselves to be manipulated by leakers, or whether they just weren't doing journalistic due diligence. I mean, a lot of us saw the same stuff they saw and knew we were seeing something troubling within the federal government as opposed to proof of a vast conspiracy with Russia.
Now, what's interesting, Mollie, about this is I know a lot of people at CNN. I have good friends there. I think Dana Bash is one of the greatest reporters ever. I have enormous respect for the intelligence of Jake Tapper. Mark Preston is a funny guy who I worked with. Zucker is a brilliant genius, and I worked with them very closely on Ford debate. I spent hundreds of hours with these people. I didn't work for them. I worked with them when Salem partnered with them on presidential debate. I just don't know what's happened. It's like they're broken.
I actually feel that way a bit, too. I mean, I have probably less regard for some of these people than you do, and some of them really did play a role in the Russia hoax that is very, very disconcerting. But it does seem as if something is broken, or like they're being compelled in some way, which I don't think is true, but it just doesn't make sense that people who cared about journalistic integrity have kind of thrown themselves over into this fanaticism.
Well, the Olympics of TDS is underway there. And they want the gold medal. And I joked earlier to somebody that it's as though Jeff Zucker was handing out bounties for people who could attract the president's anger. the way that Greg Williams allegedly, when he was the defensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints, handed out bounties for his players who would take another opponent off the field. The NFL punished him quite severely for that, and he never admitted it. But it does look like a bounty system. If you can attract the president's attention and get him angry, you're going to go up in Jeff's esteem.
Well, in general, I think there is a truth to that there is this dysfunctional, codependent relationship between the president and the media, where they both benefit from each other's extremes. And that has been something we have seen going back to 2016. And there's a reason why Donald Trump points out all these media errors, and it's because it helps him quite a bit. The media believe it helps them to act cartoonish about Trump, who is a very different and president who a lot of people, have problems with for reasons that are clear, but they forgot about what it did to their journalistic integrity, that they were unable to just cover him as they would cover any other politician without that emotional craziness that so many of them have.
It's unbalanced. I also know that it's distorting coverage of what is other than the virus, which is an all-consuming story. So there is one reason for people not to have covered the Flynn revelations, and it's because of the virus. But Mollie, the Flynn revelations, as detailed by people like Eli Lake and Andy McCarthy, who are just absolutely professional on this, are stunning and disturbing, and mainstream media is ignoring their implication.
And they're ignoring because of their own role in doing this to Mike Flynn. I mean, the campaign against Mike Flynn, we have learned so much about it in the last couple of weeks. A lot of people recognize there was something fishy about it for a long time, but learning about the motivation for why the government went after him precisely to conceal what they were doing against Trump affiliates and how they went about that. That whole campaign was able to be done because of an uncritical media that just sort of accepted leaks from high-profile people and regurgitated them in the exact manner that the leakers wanted them to be spun. And this could not have been done as effectively without the media, and nobody wants to be held accountable for their role. It's a really shocking thing what we're learning about Flynn and how corrupt the efforts were to go after him.
Yeah, as Andy McCarthy says, we've known for a long time the what happened. We haven't known the why. And Andy suggests they took out Flynn because he could protect the president. And that's like 7 days in May stuff that I would never have believed. I just would never in my mind have imagined, because I'm a product of the Department of Justice. My first job after clerking is DOJ. It doesn't work it didn't work that way.
Yes, and the Department of Justice and the FBI still have many people in them that are very good. What's sad about this case is it seems that none of the good people were involved on the cases that have received so much attention here against Mike Flynn and Carter Page and the Trump campaign and Trump affiliates in general. This is a scandal unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. It's massive, and the evidence is all there. It is weird that you can't read about it at all in many publications, or you get the actual important thing buried in paragraph 17 of a very dry story years after we were told about this dramatic Russia collusion that's obviously not true. The media are just kind of downplaying it, killing it, suppressing it, and we have a much better understanding of what was going on now than we ever did before. We always knew they really didn't like Mike Flynn. I think a lot of people thought it was related to policy differences or whatnot. Seeing them kind of spell out that they were trying to avoid having to brief him on what they were doing against Trump campaign affiliates and him, what they had done against him, and that they therefore believed that a big part of their role was to get him fired. I mean, you see FBI agents talking about, like, maybe we were trying to get him fired. Maybe we should try and get him fired. You think, where in the world did they go wrong where they thought that was their job as bureaucrats or investigators to get the president's national security advisor fired?
I remember a book about James Garfield after he was shot, where doctors maneuvered to get other doctors out of his treatment because they proposed different treatments. They knew they were threats to their power and authority. And I think Andy McCarthy, I want to ask you this. Andy's theory is they took Flynn out because he was a professional. General Stan McChrystal sat in the studio and told me the greatest intelligence professional he's ever worked with. They knew that he would know what they were doing if given enough time and access to TCISC information, that he would figure out what they had done. Do you credit that, Mollie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're openly talking about it, too, in some of the texts and discussions that came out last week. They're debating how to handle the fact that they'd have to brief him. And the reason why that was a concern is he is a lifelong intelligence professional. He would know, he would ask questions that would make them, that they would be unable to answer. And I just want to remind people, too, it also relates to why they got rid of Jeff Sessions. He did not have the acumen, maybe, that Mike Flynn had, but he's also a product of the Department of Justice, and he also would have been asking questions. It was absolutely key to them that they sideline Sessions and that they sideline Flynn, and they did it very effectively in both cases.
Okay, so my last question, in the gravity level of modern scandals, and by modernity I mean post-Civil War, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. Now, it is not broad, it is not a deep state, it is a handful of people. But what they intended to do is genuinely the most shocking thing I think I have seen in a free country's history.
It's one of these things. I've been covering this story for years and was onto it quite early. And there was something about what happened last week where we could just kind of take a step back and look at a bigger picture. And that was exactly my thought, as well as my husband's. We're like, this is a staggering scandal. And even worse, again, is that the media that were involved in perpetuating it are not there to discuss how big of a scandal this is. And a lot of really good work has been done by very few journalists on this. They are to be commended.
Take a look, Mollie, at the Pulitzer board. Take a look at it. I don't know if have you looked at the Pulitzer board recently?
Not recently.
It will never recognize this story. I didn't realize it until this morning when I looked at it, because Michael Shear was a guest of mine. He's won a Pulitzer. I said, well, I wonder who's giving out the Pulitzers. It is the most left-wing organization with any kind of bipartisan support, and it shouldn't have it. It doesn't have a right to it. It's a self-perpetuating left-wing machine.
Hugh, that's what kind of bothered me about yesterday. People were saying, well, these awards that they handed out yesterday are not for necessarily good journalism. You know, some of them were quite bad, in fact, particularly the 1619 Project, which is just riddled with errors and had to be corrected and whatnot. But I thought, why do people think that the Pulitzers would do anything but stuff like this? The moment that project was published, we knew it would get a Pulitzer. It was just in the recent years that they handed out awards for the people who wrote the Russia hoax stories. There's no need for people to believe that these Pulitzers commend good work, although occasionally they do, which is it's just a pleasant surprise. They exist to enforce and reinforce narratives that are false, and
and to censor those which are important. Yeah, they exist to also censor those narratives which are important and true, but which run counter to the dominant narrative. What I call, with a capital T and a capital N, the narrative. Mollie Hemingway, always a pleasure. Watch her on Fox News as part of the All-Stars. Follow her at the Federalist. Follow her on Twitter at Mollie. You'll find her. Thank you, Mollie.
Thank you.
What
having to brief him on what they were doing against.
And I think Andy McCarthy, threats to their power and authority. Sierra Pacific. Time. Good. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, 22 minutes after the hour. Here's the rest of my interview with Mollie Hemingway. And I think Andy McCarthy, I want to ask you this. Andy's theory is they took Flynn out because he was a professional. General Stan McChrystal sat in the studio and told me the greatest intelligence professional he's ever worked with. They knew that he would know what they were doing if given enough time and access to TCISC information, that he would figure out what they had done. Do you credit that, Mollie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're openly talking about it, too, in some of the texts and discussions that came out last week. They're debating how to handle the fact that they'd have to brief him. And the reason why that was a concern is he is a lifelong intelligence professional. He would know, he would ask questions that would make them, that they would be unable to answer. And I just want to remind people, too, it also relates to why they got rid of Jeff Sessions. He did not have the acumen maybe that Mike Flynn had, but he's also a product of the Department of Justice, and he also would have been asking questions. It was absolutely key to them that they sideline Sessions and that they sideline Flynn, and they did it very effectively in both cases.
Okay, so my last question, in the gravity level of modern scandals, and by modernity I mean post-Civil War, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. Now, it is not broad, it is not a deep state, it is a handful of people. But what they intended to do is genuinely the most shocking thing I think I have seen in a free country's history.
It's one of these things. I've been covering this story for years and was onto it quite early. And there was something about what happened last week where we could just kind of take a step back and look at a bigger picture. And that was exactly my thought, as well as my husband's. We're like, this is a staggering scandal. And even worse, again, is that the media that were involved in perpetuating it are not there to discuss how big of a scandal this is. And a lot of really good work has been done by very few journalists on this. They are to be commended.
Take a look, Mollie, at the Pulitzer board. Take a look at it. I don't know if you looked at the Pulitzer board recently?
Not recently.
It will never recognize this story. I didn't realize it until this morning when I looked at it because Michael Shear was a guest of mine. He's won a Pulitzer. I said, well, I wonder who's giving out the Pulitzers. It is the most left-wing organization with any kind of bipartisan support, and it shouldn't have it. It doesn't have a right to it. It's a self-perpetuating left-wing machine.
Hugh, that's what kind of bothered me about yesterday. People were saying, well, these awards that they handed out yesterday are not for necessarily good journalism. You know, some of them were quite bad, in fact, particularly the 1619 project, which is just riddled with errors and had to be corrected and whatnot. But I thought, why do people think that the Pulitzers would do anything but stuff like this? The moment that project was published, we knew it would get a Pulitzer. It was just in the recent years that they handed out awards for the people who wrote the Russia hoax stories. There's no need for people to believe that these Pulitzers commend good work, although occasionally they do, which is it's just a pleasant surprise. They exist to enforce and reinforce narratives that are false and,
and to censor those which are important. Yeah, they exist to also censor those narratives which are important and true, but which run counter to the dominant narrative. What I call, with a capital T and a capital N, the narrative. Mollie Hemingway, always a pleasure. Watch her on Fox News as part of the All-Stars. Follow her at the Federalist. Follow her on Twitter at Mollie. You'll find her. Thank you, Mollie.
Thank you.
And I got to do the pre-market report brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com because it's good news for a change. Things are looking good in the world economy. Oil is back up to $22 a barrel, so of course the oil stocks are going to do great today. AndrewandTodd.com will help you refinance your house to save money. They will help you buy a house at the lowest possible rate, best mortgage rates in history. They're the equal of, they're not going to go any lower than they are right now. The markets have settled down. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian from Sierra Pacific know how to get you through them. 888-888-1172. Call them today. Get started today because it's busy. AndrewandTodd.com. They will give you good financial advice. They will get you the best loan possible. Oh, yesterday the Dow was up 26 and the NASDAQ up 105. I think it's going to be better than today. I think it's going to be better today than it was yesterday because Germany and England had great days today. Great days. So I'm not a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but I think the market's going to be very good today. And I know that your interest rates will never get better And you should check at andrewandtodd.com. I'll be right back, America. Rob Portman of Ohio is next. Senator Rob Portman of the great state of Ohio, home to The Ohio State University. And Senator Portman is our hometown favorite. And he'll also recognize Three Dog Night because he's only a couple of years younger than me. So he grew up to Three Dog Night as well. Am I not right, Senator Portman? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Don't you feel bad for the college and high school kids who are not enjoying their graduations, their summers, their seasons of indifference to lifespan, right? When you're 18, 19 to 22?
Yeah, I do. I was supposed to speak at 4 graduations in Ohio, and we tried to do something virtual in each case, but it's just not the same. So a milestone has been missed, but it also builds character, right?
Yep.
So Hugh, they're learning that life isn't always easy street, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
And I think, and we'll talk about this in the second half, I think we're going to get to some opening guidelines soon. But first, I want to talk about carrying on. You had an important conversation yesterday about continuity of Senate operations and remote voting in times of crisis. This is long overdue. Yep. What was going on? What is your preliminary take on it?
Well, look, there are times when the Senate and the House, for that matter, cannot meet or should not meet, and we should still be doing our work. And it's everything from holding hearings, and we did one last week remotely, the first one I'm told ever in the history of the United States Senate, and it worked beautifully. It really did. But also deliberation, debate, amendments, votes. As you know, we have spent over $2 trillion now, going on 3. And some of that funding, particularly in the last few weeks when we have not been in session, although we've been in technically in a pro forma session, but no members have been there. We've passed over $500 billion worth of spending with members of Congress, particularly United States senators, where I am, not being engaged and involved. So I just think we should have that as a tool in the toolbox for us to be able to work remotely, securely, and we can do that now with new technology.
I mean, if you turn to the NSA, there's got to be a way to encrypt your votes and your conversations when necessary, but also to make available to the public your public hearing, say, on a judicial nominee. Is that on the table?
Absolutely. I think it is now. The Rules Committee in the United States Senate is ready to approve hearings now. And again, ours last week went very well. They said it was the first one they had done. So I spoke yesterday to the Rules Committee chairman. I know that there are going to be a couple of committees that will meet this week remotely. Even though we're here, it's not advisable for us to be, within 6 feet of each other and so on. So members can choose to plug in remotely, and it works fine. In fact, in some respects, it works better. We had a witness from New Mexico who was out there, with the coronavirus, sort of, in isolation, self-isolation. So she did it from a pickup truck with her computer screen, and it worked just fine. We didn't have any difficulties. We used off-the-shelf technology that the Senate has. It was not encrypted because this was a public hearing. We meant it to be so. It was all, online. People could see it. So I think there's an easy way to do hearings. On the encrypted side, there's also technology to do that, of course. I mean, think about, all the financial transactions that occur around the world every day and how that's done with multiple authentications, making sure that it's the right person and making sure that the person who votes, is not under any kind of duress. There are ways to do that. And by the way, other states and governments are doing it, including the UK, including the European Union.
Now, Senator Portman, I've made no secret of my admiration for Leader McConnell. I think he's the best Republican leader that the body has had in my lifetime. But he's also very old school. I mean, if you open up the dictionary to old school, you're going to see Mitch McConnell's picture there. What does the leader think about this?
Well, he's mulling it over. I mean, he is a traditionalist, and I think that has worked well for the Senate, to stick with the traditions of being the world's greatest deliberative body, and he holds that dear. But I think he is thinking about how we can operate more efficiently and effectively. By the way, you wrote a beautiful piece about Mitch recently in terms of his role in this coronavirus and how he was able to deliver quickly on something that was positive for the American people. I appreciated that.
Well, it's deserved. I don't write these things to be noticed. I write them just to make sure people in a polarized media environment understand that there are folks who are doing the right thing for the right reasons. I think you and McConnell are two of them. Like Senator Cotton was on talking about the CCP, which we'll come to. Let me be very specific. I am so concerned about judicial nominees because California, where I used to live, is starved. I mean, there are courts that are not functioning because people like Mark Scarsi, who's had a hearing, can't get a vote. People like Rick Richmond, who's been nominated, can't get a hearing. And people like John Flynn, who's a Democrat who I think is acceptable to Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein, can't even get nominated because everything's stuck. Would the new rules apply to judicial nominees like these three?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Judicial nominees. How about executive nominees who are COVID-19 related? In other words, there's a job right now at the World Health Organization that needs to be filled, and Dr. Shear from HHS has been nominated, and he'd be a great pick. This is incredibly important that we have him over there at the World Health Organization representing us. So some of these picks are really important right now. And yes, you could do those by remote voting and remote debate. And, you know, it wouldn't be any different than what we do now. Members would have the opportunity to have their voices heard. They would have the opportunity to vote, of course. And, you know, we could move on some of these issues that are really more ministerial. You know, they shouldn't require us to be in session so long as we have the ability to debate and be totally transparent about it. Let everybody see how you vote and why.
Now, Senator Portman, some of your colleagues on the left will be upset at the idea of judicial nominees in particular moving through. But I wonder, are they aware that what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander? It will help them if Vice President Biden wins, right? That would be...
Exactly.
Do they buy that argument?
Well, I think the rule of thumb in the Senate ought to be do what's right, do what's appropriate for the American people, because it's going to switch back and forth. It always has. It even has, you know, during my tenure here in the last 10 years. So you have to be sure that what you are putting in place serves you well, but also, you know, when you're in the minority, if you're a Republican now, or if you're a Democrat, when you're in the majority, it also serves you well. And that should be an incentive, I think, to have remote voting on occasions when we cannot or should not gather.
I hope so. And before we move to China, I just hope you'll write down those names, Scarsey, Richmond, and Flynn, and push all the We need judges in California. It's stopped. It's just absolutely stopped. Now, Senator, you used to be at the OMB. You know how much money we're spending. I mean, this is so much money that it's astonishing. But I don't think there's an alternative, is there?
Well, I think we are hitting deficit fatigue among a lot of Republicans because, you know, our annual budget is about $4.5 trillion. We spent about $3 trillion just on the COVID crisis. I think we needed to have a rescue package out there that was big. You know, it's about 10% of GDP has been lost, and we've added about 10% of GDP in terms of our spending, actually. And so it's sort of to fill the gap, but it should be viewed as a rescue. And now we should be talking about how do you get things moving again? How do you get the economy moving for many reasons, including the health of our citizens and being sure people have the opportunity to get back to meaningful work, but also because of the revenues. We need to have tax revenues coming in. And then we also need to look at our long-term structural debt and deficit, because we haven't touched that, of course, and that continues. So we can get over this as we did, you know, back after World War II. The same thing happened. We spent at these kinds of levels as a percent of our economy, and we were able to get over that and get back on track. But it was because we had economic growth. And because at that time, you know, we did not have this overhang of the mandatory spending that we have now. So we've got to do both, get the economy moving again. And, you know, the economy was hitting on all cylinders back in February, not long ago. And then second, we've got to look at the long-term structural problem with our debt and deficits.
Now, Senator, I see in the Wall Street Journal this morning, California borrowed $348 million for unemployment. Illinois borrowed a staggering $12.6 billion. And Connecticut, little Connecticut, $1.1 billion. To me, these loans, Speaker Pelosi is going to arrive at the table and say they must be forgiven. And I understand that. But if the plaintiffs' bar can act like vultures on the bones of American business, we're not going to have an economy. Is that the essential deal, which is to preempt state tort law, put all these claims in one federal district, and put the standard up high?
Well, I think it can be very targeted because it's about this issue. It's about what the coronavirus has resulted in. And by the way, it's not just businesses, it's hospitals, certainly it's nursing homes. Many people are very, very concerned about this. In fact, some businesses, smaller businesses maybe mostly, are thinking, you know, should I reopen with this risk because it's such a huge potential liability. So we have to address it. I think Democrats should realize that. If they're listening to their constituents back home, they're certainly hearing it. As a practical matter, everybody should want to get back to work, back to a more normal life. And to do that, we're going to have some protection.
It's like patent litigation. Put it in the Eastern District of Texas and establish some standards and because some people could be reckless. They might be liable. But let me close, absolutely. Senator, before I lose you. I'm a Nixon guy, right? So I grew up hoping that China would evolve into something that we could deal with. Has your opinion, as mine has, changed of the CCP, of the PRC in the last 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, I was always skeptical, as you know. When I was the U.S. Trade Representative, I made China my number one target, and we set up a prosecutor just for China. We took him to the World Trade Organization for the first time. I mean, I've always known they were not playing fair in terms of trade, but this goes well beyond trade. You know, this goes to the supply chain issue, where when you rely on China for something and you have a crisis as we've had, and it's not a reliable partner, that's a real problem. So I think that's the big difference now. We have obviously military competition. We have technology issues. As you know, we've taken the lead on this issue of trying to keep China from stealing our technology. But this is a new one. This is sort of how do we bring and reshore a lot of essential products back to this country. And I'm on board on doing that. I think we can do it through incentives. I don't think we need to mandate that businesses do one thing or another. I think we can do it in a way that helps protect us for the next pandemic, by the way, because we need to bring back some of the ability to produce things like masks and ventilators and gowns, all of which it turned out we were heavily reliant on China on. But also on the pharmaceutical side, we need to be sure that we have adequate pharmaceuticals here should we have another crisis, not necessarily a pandemic, but other issues that are healthcare related. So I think it's time to make some changes, and I think we can come up with a bipartisan way to do that continues to have a relationship with China. Many U.S. businesses, like that market over there for their products. There is some, very significant U.S. Revenue that comes from selling stuff to China as well. You can keep doing that as well, but we need to cut back on the reliance on China as a source for so many of these critical products.
Last question, Senator. At the Lincoln Memorial, the president intimated that China knew and allowed, not that they released it intentionally, but they knew it was abroad, the virus. And Senator Cotton just reiterated that they could have made a very cold, heartless decision to allow the virus spread in order to level the comparative disadvantage. Do you believe that?
We don't know yet. What we do know is it was reckless and irresponsible for China not to be transparent, because if they had been transparent, the rest of the world would have been much better prepared. Second, it was reckless and irresponsible for them to allow people from Wuhan to travel. I think those are the two things we do know, and that there's lots of blame right there, because if, again, they had either allowed everybody to know, including their own people, by the way, and the severity of the problem and what was really going on. And second, if they had not allowed people to leave Wuhan to travel to other places. Recall, this all started in one place. It all started in one place. So every single person who dies in America or elsewhere in the world, you can take it back when you're able to trace back to Wuhan. So
yeah.
Those were the two things that we know, and both of those were wrong and really unconscionable.
By the way, reckless and irresponsible, your phrase, that would make a great tort standard for a federal law preempting the states on COVID cases. Senator Rob Portman, good to talk to you as always, the great senator from Ohio. I appreciate it, Senator. When I come back, America, I'll wrap up today's show. I'll remind you about Relief Factor. I think Rob Portman's probably the fittest senator. I didn't have a chance to talk to him about BMI and the Telegraph story, but sometimes you run out of time before you run out of opportunity. Too bad. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I got a kick out of Rob Portman liking Three Dog Night. Anyone who is between the ages of 60 and 65 has Three Dog Night permanently embedded in their heads. I hope the Senate moves forward. Everyone's got to adapt. The Senate's got to confirm these judges, and we got to get moving. I forgot to tell you at the end of that segment, I ran out of time. I had the senator for only a brief amount of time. ReliefFactor.com. I've got to send Rob Portman some Relief Factor. He's probably the Senate's best all-around athlete. He's a triathlete. Senator Cotton can run a long way. Senator Sass can run pretty fast. There's some good athletes up there on the Hill. But I think Rob Portman all around, he's one of these Iron Man kind of guys. I got to send him some ReliefFactor.com. You need to get some ReliefFactor.com if you're doing new stuff like walking. After the show today, yesterday was a run, today's a walk. Every other day. I don't wear down the body that early. I'm 64. I'm not going to hurt myself at this time. But I take Relief Factor because if you exercise more, and I'm up, honest to goodness, I did the math yesterday. I got 250 miles in 7 weeks. I haven't done that since I was in my 40s. And that's because what else am I going to do? I'm not flying around the country. I'm not going to studios. I'm not going to lunch. I'm not meeting sources. I'm calling people. You can do it all from you can do it on a walk or a run, in fact. And so, ReliefFactor.com, it matters quite a lot. You know what else matters? We annually in May do a Angel Tree fundraising drive. And each year, thousands of you step up and send a kid to camp whose mom or dad or both parents are in prison. We can't do that this year. We can't send them to camp, but we can still help them. Angel Tree got together and said, okay, we're not going to be able to run these camps, but we can still send a box of blessings to these kids with a note from their mom or dad. I'm thinking of you. And in that box, they're going to find $150 worth of good food coupons. Good stuff that's healthy. And they're going to find sporting equipment. All right? And they're going to find a beginner's Bible or an age-appropriate Bible. Angel Tree will do that for these kids if you give them $200. Every kid. So the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I are doing 5 kids, and I would hope that if you're listening, you'll just think about it's a tough time all over the country, right? It is a very difficult time for kids. Talking with Michael Shear, the New York Times, you got an 18 and 21-year-old. That's really hard. Talking with Rob Portman about 4 graduations. Yeah, it's really hard. You know what's hardest on? Families who have military members deployed, it's really hard on them, but mom and dad will be home. They'll come back after 6, 9, 12 months. If you've got mom or dad in jail or prison and they're serving longer than a year, it's really hard. And that's where Angel Tree steps in. And in the summertime, it's really going to matter in the summer of the virus where we just don't know who's going to be able to do what where. Help these kids out. $200 will get a box of blessings, as Angel Tree calls it, to every kid that is sponsored will get one. So if you do 5 boxes will go out with a note from mom or dad or both of them saying, can't be with you, love you. Here's some stuff. Get some good stuff to eat. Use this soccer ball. Go shoot some hoops. Stay where you're safe, where you can play, but where you can have an impact. That's Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Reminding on the last time, giving masks. You know, today is Giving Tuesday. Today is Giving Tuesday. You're supposed to be generous today. And I'm going to be generous to giving masks and to other people. I got to get masks. You got to get masks. Every time you order a mask from givingmasks.com, and these are European certified FFP2 surgical masks, every time you give that, they'll give one to the hospital of my choice, which happens to be Children's Hospital of Orange County, CHOC. Because I've worked with Kim Kripe, who's their CEO, and Dr. Mignon, who's their chief medical officer, for literally 17 years. Literally 17 years I was on a board with these two, public health board. And then I moved back to Virginia, so I had to leave the board behind. They continue on. They press on. They're amazing professionals. CHOC is one of the great hospitals in the country. And so they asked me if giving masks, we're going to run a promotion on your show. Where do you want the mask to go? And I said, CHOC. So if you go to givingmask.com/Hugh, H-U-G-H, they will make that happen. I encourage all of you to look at my Twitter feed. I have linked the Telegraph, which I think is a must-have subscription if you can afford it. 10 times more people may be immune to coronavirus in Germany than predicted. That's big news if it's that widespread. also in the Telegraph. Is weight a more significant factor than age in the next stage of the lockdown? I think we're going to find out that body mass index is one of the comorbidities that is most deadly in combination with the COVID. So don't panic if you're above, if you're heavy. Don't panic. Do something. Just exercise. Go walk. Just walk. Quarter mile, half mile, a mile. Get started. A little bit at a time. Everybody who has lost weight successfully over a long period of time has always told me the same thing. Eat less, exercise more. It's not a secret. Just say today, okay, and every day, I'm going to put on my mask to protect the people coming at you or moving past you, and I'm going to go walk. You could say a prayer at the same time and pray for the people who are suffering, because it's a worldwide deal. It's not about America. It's about the world. And every single person in the world's got fear on their mind. Just pray about that and go walk. And come back tomorrow, because I've got the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. And he knows what the score is, and he'll give you the update on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.